So now we come to the other half of the story from Dr. Frankenstein's side of things. Dr. Frankenstein has just been told by the monster that he must create a female monster for him. He responds, "No, should I create another creature like yourself who will hurt people? I'll never agree to it. Only you can do this. You must not refuse. I am dangerous because I am miserable. What I am asking for is reasonable. Do not refuse." Although I felt afraid, I saw the truth in what he said. "If you agree, neither you nor anyone else will ever see us again. We'll sleep on dried leaves and eat nuts and fruit. We'll live peacefully." "How can you live in wild places without people? You want people's love, and you'll return to find it. They will hate you, and then you'll want to kill again." "I promise you that I won't." "Why should I trust you? The love of another being will remove the cause of my crime." "I'll do it if you agree to leave Europe forever and never visit an area where people live." "I promise that if you give me this, you'll never see me again. Go home and start your work. I will watch your progress. When you're ready, I'll appear." He went down the mountain extremely quickly and disappeared. With a heavy heart, I walked down toward the valley. I returned to my family in Geneva. They were worried by my wild appearance. I said very little to them, although I loved them so much. Weeks passed, and I could not start my work. I was afraid of the monster, but I hated the task too much. It began to seem less necessary to do it. My health was much better. When I didn't think about my promise, I felt happy. "I'm happy to see you better, my son, but you're still unhappy. You still avoid us. Yesterday, I had an idea about what might be the cause of this. I have always looked forward to your marriage to Elizabeth, but perhaps you think of her as a sister or love someone else. My dear father, I love Elizabeth and I want to marry her. If you feel that way, then we will certainly be happy. Tell me, would you dislike an immediate marriage?" For some time, I could not reply to my father. The idea of an immediate marriage filled me with horror. I hadn't done what I had promised the monster. I didn't dare break my promise. First, the monster had to leave with his mate. Then I could enjoy the happiness of marriage in peace. I remembered that I needed to go to England. I had to get new information for my task. Also, I had to be away from those I loved while I worked. I persuaded my father to agree to the trip. He hoped it would be good for me. I could go for a few months or even a year. He asked Clerval to go with me. I needed to be alone to work, but if Clerval was with me, I wouldn't have hours for lonely thought, and he might even stop the monster from visiting me. We planned that Elizabeth and I would marry when I returned. For me, this was my reward for completing the task I hated. I was afraid of leaving my family. My enemy could attack them while I was away. But he had promised to follow me everywhere, so would he not come to England? We decided to stay in London for a few months. It was a wonderful city, but I couldn't enjoy it. A dark cloud hung over me. "This is living," says Henry. Clerval wanted to meet men who were clever and full of new ideas. This was not important to me. My aim was to get the information I needed for my task. I took my letters of introduction to the most famous natural sciences. I visited these people only for the information they could give me. I felt despair when I was with other people. I wasn't like them. Clerval was how I had been in the past. He wanted to learn and do new things. He was always working toward achieving something he had wanted for a long time. He wanted to go to India so that he could become a trader there. He was always busy. I often refused to go places with him so that I could be alone. I began to collect the materials that I needed for my new creation. I hated doing it. After a few months in London, we received an invitation from a friend in the north of Scotland. I didn't like being with people, but I wanted very much to see the mountains and streams again, so we accepted the invitation. On the way to Edinburgh, we visited Windsor, Oxford, Matlock, and the Cumberland Lakes. I took my equipment and materials so that I could finish my work in the north of Scotland. Henry loved the beauty of Edinburgh, but I wanted to finish the journey. Sometimes I thought the monster had followed me. I was afraid he would kill Henry because I wasn't working fast enough. After a week, we left Edinburgh and traveled on to Perth. But I didn't want to be with strangers or to be a guest in someone else's house. Henry, I want to travel around Scotland alone. Enjoy your stay here, and I'll meet you here in a month or two. Let me be alone for a short time. When I return, I'll be happier, I hope. I'd rather be with you than these people that I don't know. I have decided to do this. Then hurry back, my dear friend. I wanted to find a place that was very far from everything. I chose a small rocky island in the Orkneys. Only 5 people and a few cows lived there. I lived in a small hut. I worked during the day, and in the evening I walked along the stony beach to listen to the waves as they crashed at my feet. As the days passed, I began to hate my work more and more. Sometimes I couldn't do it at all, and at other times I worked day and night. I became restless and nervous. The whole time I was afraid of meeting the monster. When I worked on my first experiment, I felt excited. This time I felt sick. One evening I began to think about what I was doing. 3 years earlier, I had created a monster who had done dreadful things. Now I was creating another creature. I didn't know what she would do. Perhaps she would be worse than her mate and kill for pleasure. He had promised to live far away from everyone, but she had not made that promise. Perhaps she would refuse to. Perhaps they would hate each other. He might think she was ugly. She might turn away from him. She might leave him and make him more miserable. Or they could have children who might be dangerous. For the first time, I realized what I had done. I had bought my own peace at the price, perhaps, of the existence of the whole human race. Suddenly, yes, he had followed me. Now he had come to claim what I had promised him. His face was full of evil. I felt crazy when I thought of my promise to create another monster like him. The monster watched in horror as I destroyed the only creature that could bring him happiness. He gave a cry of despair and revenge and disappeared. I promised myself that I would never work on this task again. Several hours passed. Then I heard the sound of a boat. Somebody landed near my house. You have destroyed your work. Do you intend to break your promise to me? Do you dare destroy my hopes? Yes, I will break my promise. I will never create another creature like you again. Remember that I have power. You are my creator, but I am your master. Obey. Your threat showed me that I have made the right decision. Go away. Am I to be alone, even though all other men and animals have their mates? Are you going to be happy while I am miserable? I will have my revenge. You will be sorry for the injuries you have given me. I'll go, but remember, I will be with you on your wedding night. Monster, before you kill me, be sure of your own safety. He disappeared in his boat, and everything was silent again. I thought again of his words. I will be with you on your wedding night. That was going to be the day of my death. I did not feel afraid. I felt sorry for Elizabeth. I decided not to die without a fight. The next day, I received a letter from Clerval. He asked me to join him again. The letter brought me back to real life, and I decided to leave the island. I packed up my equipment and the parts of my unfinished creature. Very early the next morning, I sailed out and threw them into the sea. The air was so pure that I decided to stay longer in the water. Eventually, clouds hid the moon. Everything was dark, and I heard only the sound of the boat. In a short time, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the sun was quite high in the sky, the wind was high too, and the waves were threatening the safety of my boat. The wind had driven me a long way from the coast. When I tried to change direction, water quickly filled the boat. I could only sail with the wind behind me. I looked at the sea. It was going to be my grave. Monster, you've gotten what you wanted. Some hours passed in this way, but slowly the wind became gentler and the sea became calmer. I was feeling sick and very tired when suddenly I saw land. I cried with joy. I knew I was finally safe. My good friends, will you tell me the name of this town? Where am I? You'll know soon. You might not like the place, but you won't be able to choose where you stay. And why do you answer me so roughly? Surely the English do not usually speak to strangers so unkindly. I don't know what the English do, but the Irish people hate evil people. You must come with me to Mr. Kerwin the judge. You must tell him about the murder of a man here last night. I was taken to the judge, an old man with calm and kindly manners. He looked at me, however, quite unkindly. Who is appearing as a witness? I am, sir. I was out in my boat with my brother-in-law, Daniel Nugent. As I was walking along home along the beach, I hit my foot on the body of a man. His clothes were dry. Someone had killed him. The black marks from the monster's fingers were on his neck. I remembered my brother's murder, and I felt extremely shaken. Mr. Kerwin saw that I was badly affected. Of course he thought I was guilty. My name is Daniel Nugent, sir. Just before we found the body, I saw a man in a boat quite close to the shore. It looked like the same boat that the man had just landed in. A woman also saw a man in a boat. He sailed away from the place where the body was found. They all agreed that the strong wind had driven me back to the shore to where I had left the body. Show him the body. I want to see how he reacts. I was calm. I knew that the people on the island I had left could prove my innocence. I was talking to them when the body was found. No, my dearest Henry, not you too. I have already destroyed two people, but you, Clerval, my friend? The sight of Henry was too much for me. I fell down in a fit. I was very sick for 2 months. I said some dreadful things during my illness, I learned later. I called myself the murderer of William, Justine, and Clerval. Fortunately, only Mr. Curran understood my native language, but my loud cries frightened the other people around me. Why didn't I die? I was more miserable than anyone had ever been before. But I survived, and after 2 months I woke up in prison. Are you better now, sir? I believe I am. I'm sorry I'm still alive to feel this pain and horror. Yes, it would be better for you if you were dead, but that's none of my business. I am just here to take care of you and to make you well. I soon learned that Mr. Kerwin had been extremely kind to me. He had given me the best room in the prison and a doctor and a nurse. One day, while I was slowly recovering, he visited me. You will soon leave this place, I hope. I'm sure that something will show that you are innocent. When you became sick, I looked through all the papers that you had. I found a letter from your father in Geneva, and I wrote to him. Oh, no, tell me, who is dead now? Your family is perfectly well, and someone has come to visit you. Father, you're safe? Everyone is safe. And Elizabeth? And Ernest? Everyone is safe. What a place this is, my son. You travel to find happiness, but something terrible seems to follow you. And poor Clerval. I had to travel nearly 100 miles to appear in court. Mr. Kerwin arranged my defense. The court decided that I was innocent. We proved that I was on the Orkney Islands when the body was found. I was allowed to go free. I could breathe fresh air and go home. But for me, everywhere was hateful. I often wanted to end my life, but I still had one duty. I had to take care of the people I loved, and I had to fight the murderer. When we reached Paris, I received a letter from Elizabeth. Tell me, dearest Victor, do you love someone else? I love you, but it is your happiness that I desire. Elizabeth. I remember the monster's threat. I will be with you on your wedding night. He had decided to kill me on that night, sweet Elizabeth. I would die to make her happy. My dearest Elizabeth, I am afraid that little happiness remains for us on earth. However, all my future happiness is centered on you. I promise myself to you and no one else. I have one dreadful secret which will fill you with horror. I will tell it to you the day after our marriage. Until then, do not mention it. Victor. We returned to Geneva. Elizabeth welcomed me warmly. Have you promised yourself to another woman? No, I love Elizabeth and I'm looking forward to our wedding. Let's fix the date now. We got married 10 days later. I carried a knife and a gun to protect myself. Elizabeth seemed happy and my father was full of joy. But I had only prepared for my own death, not for the death of anyone dear to me. Elizabeth had inherited from her family a small house by Lake Como. We planned to spend our first days there. After the wedding, we went by boat to Evian. You're so sad, my love. Let me enjoy the happiness of today after everything I have suffered. Be happy, my dear Victor. Something whispers to me that I mustn't look forward to happiness, but I won't listen to such a voice. What a beautiful day. How happy and calm nature looks. Those were the last moments of my life when I felt happy. As we reached the shore, my fear returned. It has stayed with me and will stay forever. We took a short walk along the shore and admired the lovely scene. Suddenly, the wind grew stronger and a heavy rain came down. I was anxious and held tightly to my gun. What are you afraid of, Victor? Oh, it's just the storm, and it's a dreadful night. Please go to bed, my love. I'll join you later. Victor, she left me and I searched the house for the monster, but I found nothing. Ah! As I heard the scream, I realized what was happening. Elizabeth! I fainted. When I recovered, I rushed toward her. I held her in my arms. The marks of the monster's fingers were on her neck. I looked up at the window and I saw the monster. He seemed to smile as he pointed to the dead body of my wife. Bang! Bang! He ran away, and into the lake. The sound of the gun attracted a crowd who helped me look for the monster. After several hours, we returned. We hadn't found him. Many of the people thought I had imagined him. I was in a cloud of confusion and horror. The deaths of William, Justine, Clerval, and now my wife. My father and Ernest might die next. I decided to return to Geneva as quickly as possible. My father and Ernest were alive, but my father was very badly affected by Elizabeth's death. It was too much for him, and a few days later he died in my arms. What happened to me then? I don't know. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was alone in a dark room in a prison. I had been there for many months. When I was allowed to leave, I visited a judge in the town. I wanted to tell him about the monster. Sir, I know who murdered my brother and my wife. I want you to help me find him. I'll do everything that I can, sir. Thank you. My story is strange, but it's all true. I told him my story. At first he couldn't believe it, but as I continued, he became more interested. It's your duty to catch this murderer. I'd like to, but this creature sounds too powerful, and no one knows where he could be now. You refuse to help me. Then I'll find him myself. I'll destroy him. I left his house angrily. I went away to think about what to do. Revenge gave me strength. I decided to leave Geneva forever, but first I found myself by the graves of William, Elizabeth, and my father. Their spirits seemed to fly around. I felt very angry. I will follow the monster who has caused these deaths until either he dies or I die. Let him feel the dreadful sadness that I feel. I'm happy. You've decided to live, miserable creature. I ran toward him, but he escaped. I ran after him and have been following him for many months. I followed him through France and then to the Black Sea, and then I went after him through Russia. He left messages on trees or stones to guide me. I bought a sled and dogs. I crossed the snow quickly and came closer to him. When I had almost reached him, the ice broke. The sea came between us, and I was left on a piece of ice. When I saw your ship, I managed to move toward it. You saved me when I was close to death. I still fear death because I haven't completed my task. If I die, Walton, find him and kill him. Promise me, please.